President has requested $1.9 billion in emergency funding to combat the Zika outbreak. But that is not what House Republicans have brought to the floor today. Instead, they're putting forward legislation that would provide just $622 million, less than a third, as I said. That means we can't fully fund development of a vaccine, deployment of diagnostic testing, especially for pregnant women, and vector control to manage mosquito populations. In addition to its inadequate funding level, the Republican bill offsets the spending by further depleting funds that were appropriated to combat the Ebola virus. I know they're going to say they're going to backfill it. I won't hold my breath. The administration has already been forced to borrow more than $500 million from Ebola accounts, while congressional Republicans ignored its Zika supplemental funding request from February 22nd to this day. That's no way to handle public health crises. I urge my colleagues on the Republican side to join us to respond effectively to the President's request. Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida, who supports the President's request, said last week, not Steny Hoyer, Democrat, Vern Buchanan, Republican.
Gentleman's time has expired.
May I have one additional minute? One additional minute.
The gentleman is recognized for one additional minute.
Vern Buchanan said this: all members of Congress should take the virus seriously and put aside partisanship. Time is not on our side as the summer months draw near. And I will in just a second on your time. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida said in April, Congress is going to have to explain to the people why it is that we sat around for weeks and did nothing on something of this magnitude. That's Marco Rubio. Let's work together to pass an emergency supplemental. Steve Womack said this: if we fail to deal with the issue, and there are hardships that would be posed on society in this country, you wouldn't be able to compute those costs. It's a dice roll, he said, to get into an argument about Zika funding and running the risk in having something catastrophic happen as we own it, he said. You will own it if this gets out of hand and we don't have the appropriate resources deployed now. It should have been 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago. Let's not have this become a crisis. Let us act now on the full sum necessary to meet this crisis.
I rise today in support of the Zika Response Appropriations Act. There's no question the Zika crisis presents a serious threat to our nation's public health, and an immediate, impactful response is required. The bill does such. This important legislation provides funding immediately for the most pressing needs, including care for infants and mothers, vaccine development, and efforts to control the spread of the disease. Mr. Chairman, let me be clear, this is not the final word on the fight against Zika. The funding level we're discussing today quickly and effectively funds much-needed efforts for the current fiscal year 2016. It is an immediate response while making progress on regular order as well, and we will fund fiscal year 2017 expenditures, and so there will be more. As has already been said, this bill is fully offset by using leftover funds to combat the Ebola outbreak and unused administrative funds at the Department of Health and Human Services. It's the responsible and thoughtful approach to an issue and mission we all agree on, right? Combating Zika. Some have argued the bill should fully fund the President's request. The fact that repurposed Ebola funds used to offset this bill remain unspent years later shows it's hard to predict how much it will cost to contain an outbreak and where funds will be needed. The House is acting quickly, responsibly, as we make repeated requests of the administration to share a detailed plan. Repeatedly, we've gotten incomplete responses. That's troubling. The administration has no complete plan, but they want to fund it. That's simply the wrong approach. Though we pass this bill today, work will continue tomorrow on fully funding an effective and comprehensive plan to stop the Zika virus. We're doing this as we gather the information we need to move forward. This bill responsibly and effectively provides the needed funding where the government is ready now to help those in need. Mr. Chairman, we can argue about process in this chamber all night, but that will do nothing to help the women and children facing very real health dangers caused by the Zika virus. What will help them is passing this critical, targeted, and responsible legislation now, which provides needed funding now where it can actually be used. Our subcommittee chairs, Cole and Granger, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I urge my colleagues to support this important bill.
This bill is woefully inadequate. The Zika virus is a public health emergency. It is a crisis. Last week, 1,204 confirmed cases in the United States and its territories. Over 100 of them pregnant women. One person has died. Temperatures are rising already and reaching high levels in the United States in the areas where these mosquitoes thrive. And we're told that this could spread to 30 states. The Olympics are less than 80 days away in Brazil. We are going to send our young men and women into harm's way. The window for us to act on this effort is closing. And the Majority Zika Response Appropriations Act is too little. It is too late. It only provides a third of the President's request. And without additional funding, the CDC will not be able to protect pregnant women by better understanding the link between Zika and adverse health effects. They will not be able to control and mitigate mosquito populations before the epidemic spreads further. They lose laboratory capacity. They lose the ability to surveillance the outbreak as it is moving on. The most immediate needs of state and local public health departments are woefully underfunded by the House Republican bill. Our states and our municipalities' emergency funds have been slashed, and I'd ask to offer for unanimous consent the list of all of the states in this country and the loss of preparedness funds in order to be able to deal with a crisis. Thank you. While the administration requested $743 million for CDC's public health activities, the House bill provides only $120 million, 84% below the request. Who are we kidding? This is going to put millions of pregnant women in danger. According to the CDC, pregnant women are already facing unacceptably long delays in learning Zika test results. Physicians are advising women not to get pregnant. Pregnant women are scared to death about what is going to happen to the child that they are carrying. And Director Tom Friedman has said that experts estimate a single child with birth defects can cost $10 million to care for. We need to prevent this. And the amount of money that the majority has talked about is inadequate to prevent it. And if each child takes $10 million to care for, and we take a look at $622 million, we're going to look at our ability to take care of 62 children who might be affected with microcephaly. This says nothing about what the child's quality of life is. The delays in learning to speak, to walk. Can I... 1 minute, thank you.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 additional minute.
It's a delay in learning to speak, walk, hear, and eat. Imagine. But we can stop this crisis before it gets worse. We have to act now, and we have to fully fund the President's request. It is the responsible thing to do. More importantly, it is the moral thing to do. Months from now, when the results of our inaction become apparent, we will ask ourselves, why did we delay? Why did we wait? You know, I do not often quote Senator Marco Rubio, but yesterday he said this about the House bill, and I quote, "Frankly, that's just not going to cut it. If we don't spend more than that on the front end, I think we're going to spend a lot more later because the problem is not going to go away," end quote. I could not agree more. We need to act now. It is our responsibility. The President's request was in February. It is now almost the end of May. People are suffering, and we have the power in this body to stop that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 5243, the Zika Response Appropriation Act 2016. I'd like to acknowledge the thoughtful leadership of Chairman Rogers on this matter. The bill provides $622.1 million for the Department of Health and Human Service agencies, the State Department, and USAID to fight and prevent the spread of the Zika virus. This funding will be available immediately. This funding is for the fiscal year only, available until September 30th, 2016. This funding is entirely offset. And finally, the bill contains strong oversight measures to ensure responsible and effective use of taxpayer dollars. The resources provided in the bill are in addition to the $589 million the Obama administration has already identified to repurpose to fight Zika. In other words, $1.2 billion will be in place to combat the virus. Please stand with me today in support of H.R. 5243.
Let me thank the gentlelady from New York, and let me thank the chairman of the full committee. And let me thank the health scientists and doctors who have given us the real story of this case. Mr. Speaker, the first Ebola case was in Texas, the first case in the United States. And the CDC says that we have not extinguished or eliminated Ebola. The proposal today is not $1.2 billion. It is $600 million, because you have taken $600 million or so out of the Ebola. And the doctors indicate that there are about 8 clusters or more of Ebola in Africa, where 85 CDC personnel are there. And if one case breaks out, we will need 1,000 personnel to deal with it. And so what we are doing with the Zika funding is we are not providing the Centers for Disease Control what they need. $10 million to care for a child. They do not have the tools in order to do it. They cannot, people carrying the Zika virus do not know that they have the Zika virus. And as well, they have asked for $800 million, of which you are not giving to them. This is an epicenter of the potential of the Zika virus in the United States. The idea that there's sitting water in places like the Gulf region, the idea that people travel and the person who's traveling has a mosquito that bites them, and then that mosquito can transmit it. Here are the mosquito cesspools in Houston, Texas. So today I stand in opposition to the underlying proposal. We need the $1.9 billion that the administration has asked for. We cannot rob from Peter to pay Paul. And if you listen to the diagnosis or you listen to the assessment, the doctors are saying that the Zika virus invades the brain of the baby and destroys that brain. And therefore, we do not know the long-term effects of a woman or of those who have not yet been assessed of the Zika virus. This is the wrong way to go. Vote against this bill. Give what the president wants and the CDC wants now.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the gentlelady from Texas. We should be thankful for the scientists we have, whether it's at the CDC, whether it's at the NIH, those public health officials who are going to make sure that the mosquito control occurs that's necessary. To those who are at BARDA and other agencies where we develop the vaccines that are necessary and do the necessary research. This House bill is, in distinction to the President's request, is targeted and well thought out. This bill deals just with Zika. The President's request didn't. It dealt with whatever other infectious disease comes down the road as well, yet Zika is what's in front of us now. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to complete the necessary research and to complete the vaccine development, bring it to market. This bill deals with the needs over the next 6 months. The administration requested a total of about $1.6 billion in research, because there's about $300 million has nothing to do, really, with researching and curing Zika. So it's $1.6 billion over 3 years. The House took the position we actually need to front-load that. We need to deal with this fiscal year. So we put together a package of $1.2 billion to be spent over the next 6 months to make sure that we start the necessary research, we start the vaccine development, and deal with those out years through the normal appropriations process, which is going to take place over the next 2 years. So our approach is actually a much more valid approach. Targeted, well thought out, will provide all the necessary funds to the CDC, NIH, to the vaccine development, the mosquito control over the next 6 months when we need it most. and then add additional funds as necessary. As science learns more about what we need, we can't possibly know what we need now. The administration put a request without possibly knowing what we need 2 or 3 years in the future. We will find out what we need, and we'll add those. Mr. Speaker, this is the right approach. This is actually more money up front than the administration has asked for, which is exactly the correct approach to deal with this imminent threat to the health of U.S. citizens here and in Puerto Rico.